Well, hi. My name is Ulises Lacoa, and today I'm going to be talking about the U.S. opportunities for exporting biomass, specifically in exporting to the European market. Well, the world energy demand has been increasing, and there's no reason to believe it's not going to keep increasing. We can see that the last years, the sources for renewable and new technologies has also been increasing, and after 2020, we expect them to increase even more. The European 2020 strategy wants to obtain 20% of the total energy consumption and from renewable sources, and they also want to increase their energy efficiency by 20%. So the objective of this study is to understand where the U.S. industry, the biomass industry, to give their wood products such as wood chips, pellets, torrefied pellets, and briquettes into that market based on those regulations given by the 2020 goal. So for the study, I did the following steps. I had to identify the current and future EU targets and regulations, and then I quantified the European biomass demand. After having that number and knowing how much the market was going to require, I analyzed how much biomass the US had to get into that market, and finally I developed some scenarios in order to compare and know what's the market and the opportunities for the US gonna be in the future. So the Europeans plan divide the way we get, the sources we use of energy in 3 different sectors. There's the electricity sector, there's also the heating sector, and finally the transportation sector. For the electricity sector, they expect to have more than 1/3 and to get more than 1/3 of the energy from renewable resources, of which biomass is going to represent 6.5% of that energy consumption. And then for the heating sector, about 1/5 of the energy is going to be consumed, and the source of that energy is going to come from renewable energy, being biomass, 70.2% of that energy. And finally, for the transportation sector, solid biomass is not going to represent like an important amount of energy. So for that reason, I'm not including it in my study. And well, according to the action plan the European Union developed, they're going to need about 94.3 megaton of energy by 2020, being Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, the biggest markets for the biomass energy. And as you can see, in every market, the heat and the energy used for heat is going to be the important one. It's going to require more. It's the one that's going to require more energy. to understand the current trends and projections for the European Union, we have to make a distinction for the final energy and primary biomass definitions. When we talk about final energy, I'm talking about the energy we get after the conversion. So that 94.3 megatonne I was talking about refers to what amount of energy the European Union needs to deliver after the conversion. And then the primary biomass is what we have to consider. This is when we consider the efficiency. So it's the amount of material we're gonna need as a fuel input before the energy conversion. So, well, we know what the European Union is going to need, but I also had to quantify how much they had and what was their domestic supply. For that purpose, I selected the two sectors which represent an important part of the woody biomass, which is the forestry and the waste sector. For 2015, they're expecting about 70 megatonne of supply, and for 2020, they're expecting about 85 megatonne. So, if we want to know actually what's the amount of energy Europe is going to need, we have to consider the efficiencies. For that, I'm gonna develop different scenarios based on the different efficiencies. As you can see, the only difference is gonna be in the electricity sector, because the heating and cooling sector is gonna keep the same efficiency in every scenario. So what could happen is if the efficiency continue they are right now, it's going to be about 30% for the electricity. If we based our scenario in business as usual, it's gonna be a 34% efficiency. And if some new technology comes out and we are going to experience an increase in energy conversion, then we're going to expect it to go up to 37%. So now, once we know what's the final energy of the European Union is going to need, we have to figure out, well, now we know what's the efficiency conversion, right? So for each scenario, you're going to see we're going from 94.3 megatonne, which is the requirement, up to 131, 140 megatonne, depending on the scenario. So after we have, now that we know like what's the amount of energy that the European Union is going to need, after we know their needs and their domestic supply, I'm going to have to evaluate and make an analysis on how much energy or biomass does the U.S. has. So for that, I use a criteria, which is the same one that U.S. billion ton of days uses. I'm selecting from the biomass resources. I'm selecting some subsets from each resource, being the primary resource for forest land, the primary agricultural resource, and the secondary residues and waste resource. From the primary resource, I'm selecting the composite operations, the other removal residues, the thinnings, and the conventional products. And then for the secondary resources, I'm picking the urban wood waste and the unused mill residues. Well, I think the important thing about this criteria is that I'm only considering that material that is not being used currently. So, for example, the fuel wood is being used for another industry, so I'm not considering that as material available in the United States. Oh, the tool I used for to get all this data was the KDF, which is the Knowledge Development Framework for Biomass, which is the tool that U.S. Billington used to get the data. So, the good thing about the tool is that it allowed me to know how much energy or biomass we had at different prices. So you can see that at $40 we have about 8 megaton of energy available, and at 60 we had about 10 megaton available. And then when we could consider how much biomass, solid biomass we're going to have, regardless of the price, you can see it goes up to almost 30 megaton. And then in this graph, the blue line is what the European Union requirements are, and the red line is the domestic supply. So if we do not consider the efficiency, the difference between these lines would be like the gap or the amount of energy the European Union is going to need to import. But as we are considering the efficiency, you can see that the gap is going to be actually bigger, and they're going to, if we consider the efficiency, they're going to need to import a lot of biomass to fulfill their goals or satisfy the demand. And again, in this graph, you can see how, depending on the scenario, that biomass requirement is gonna be different depending on the scenario. And right here, I'm showing what the gap is gonna look like if we consider, if we do not consider the efficiencies, the gap, or the amount of energy the European Union is going to need. It's going to go, could be about 10 megaton, but we start considering it, it's going to go up to maybe 50 or 40 megaton. And in here, I wanted to compare, like, what's the difference for 2020 between the energy the European Union is supplying or has as domestic supply, and how much is their demand going to be. And again, you can see that when you take into account the efficiencies, the gap increases in an important matter. So now I'm considering the United States. The red bar is what the European Union is going to require to import, and then the other bars are going to be what the United States has available to export at any price. So it's going to have, it's not going to have enough to fulfill the European Union demand at $40–50, but at $60, yeah, it could do it. And if we consider all the available biomass, then they could really do it. The thing is, in this scenario, we're not considering efficiency. So if we consider efficiency, we have like a totally different picture here, because if any of the scenarios I developed, none of them, not even using all the available biomass in the United States at any price, is going to let us satisfy the European Union's demand. So at a $40 price in 2020, which represents about an 80.1 megaton in energy, the United States it's only going to be able to fulfill between 15% and 18% of the European Union's import requirements. And then at a $50 price, which represents about 9.2 megaton energy, the United States is going to be able to satisfy about 70 to 20% of the European Union's import requirements. At $60, which represents 10.2 megaton, the United States is going to be able to satisfy between 19 and 22% of that requirement. And when we consider all the biomass available at any price, which could be up to $200 per dry ton, you're gonna be able to fulfill about 53 to 63%. So not even with all the available biomass in the United States is going to be able to satisfy the European Union's demand. So the conclusions is that, well, we know that about 70.2% is what the European Union is expected to consume in the heating sector related to biomass, and about 6.5% is going to be used. Biomass is going to be consumed in the electricity sector. We also know that the countries with the biggest market are going to be Germany, Sweden, Spain, Italy, United Kingdom, Finland, France, Poland, and the Netherlands. And an interesting fact in here is that, well, most of these countries are going to be able, they're going to have an important supply, domestic supply, but in the Italy and the Luxembourg case, they're falling behind their goals. So there's going to be an important, you have to study those particular cases, because they're trying to figure out how they're going to do, because they're not reaching the goals. And then another thing is that when we consider the energy efficiencies, there's a significant shortfall of primary biomass within the EU, as you could see in the charts. When you do not consider the energy efficiency, there's, the EU doesn't have, the United States could actually fulfill all of their import requirements, but when we start considering the efficiency, that's when you find out that not even with all the available biomass, you're going to be able to satisfy that market. And then it's also a fact that the energy requirement is increasing, and it's going to keep increasing, but at least that's what's going to happen in Europe. But the amount of available biomass in the United States is not going to keep growing at the same rate. So there's going to be, the gap is increasing every year. The gap is increasing more and more. So that's going to be an issue for the future. And then the other thing is that when we are considering like reasonable prices for the dry ton, the United States is not going to be able to fulfill all that market at those prices, and only when we consider higher prices is when you could actually say that you have an important participation in that market. So for a further study, I think there should be plans to approach the European market and considering different conversion efficiency scenarios, as well as different prices for the biomass. Thank you. Is there any question?
So when you're talking about exporting biomass, are you talking specifically about pellets?
I'm talking about solid biomass, so it could be pellets, it could be chips. I mean, because, for example, for the urban source, maybe you're not going to be able to do pellets with it. So I'm considering more than with pellets. Although most of the literature review referred to pellets, and it was like the major product they wanted to export.
The reason I ask, I guess, sort of a follow-up question is, I was wondering about the assumptions that you made for what U.S. biomass is currently available to be. Why did you choose those specific? I guess I wonder, what other sorts of currently used, like biomass sources that are in current use, there wouldn't be any sort of competition there for,
Yeah, I didn't use the currently used biomass, and I based. The other selections I made was because I know in the other sources there was woody biomass, and I basically based my criteria on the billion ton. I used their same criteria.
All right. Oh.
And it's not only wood.
Yeah, it only is wood.
Do you prefer mainly to the European Union? Because there is a crisis there are things that are going to maybe slow down. But people don't talk too much about risk. Three countries, Brazil, Russia, China, India. I have no clue about how they can factor in this discussion. Have any idea about?
I read something about Russia and how, the European Union is considering to buy biomass or renewable energy from other countries that's not the United States. So that's something we also have to consider, because from what I read, the United States is not important. They're not really considering the United States in a big. Of course, that's from an article I read.
As like a major contributor to.
Yeah.
They're going to get in the game.
Right.
They're going to. Brazil is just.
So what are the expectations?
Well, Sun Q and I were talking about that. For instance, Brazil has collided with pulp and paper plants and pellet plants together as integrated companies, along with their plantations, the already plantations that they have there, just to get in the game. And one of the things that we were talking about is for China, it is a long way to Europe. So that might not be as easy as United States. But again, Canada was a competitor, shipping material from Vancouver all the way to Panama Canal and going up. So if you can find that sweet spot cost that you're going to be able to be competitor, you might be able to do it. Now, it's depending on your location in Europe, because if we're talking about United Kingdom, yeah, you're too far from Russia. But if you're talking about Finland, all right, you're not too far. You're just next door, so you might be able to, to find all of those a good business. Pelletization might improve their transportation cost, and you're going to be able to get in the game. India as well. So. Sooner or later, as soon as they're going to see the investment and the return, they're just going to get it again.
Unlike in the United States. And they're getting all these policies forced. Hardly
I think they're looking at it. They get a lot of gas from Russia. Russia can turn that on.
So, biomass from U.S. and Brazil and I don't know, India might be more secure than Russia. Could be. Or who is the most reliable supplier? Because they don't have it. Period. So it's not like we United States have the natural resources that we can convert into the energy. They don't have it. So they have to rely on other suppliers. So.
They can try to Russia.
Maybe it's because they just don't have a mature industry.
That's the problem.
And Ingrid was also saying maybe it's also an issue of transportation. They don't have very good systems.
But they do have the railroad.
Yeah.
And it's already going from Russia to Finland and Sweden and so on. That's correct.
So I got a question. Knowing that the best case scenario is that the U.S. is not going to be able to supply 20% of Europe's requirements, do you think it makes sense from energy independence or energy protection here in the U.S. to contend that biomass over there, knowing that it's that little, that we can actually benefit from a security point of view, or we're not there yet to actually think about security?
What do you mean with security?
So, being independent with energy, knowing that we won't depend on some countries that have oil and they're not that reliable, or
I know, I guess right now I'm thinking, is there a policy that's going to affect that decision? Maybe it'd be important, but if the prices and the prices are good enough to do it, well, I guess the United States is going to do it. There are no policies like regulating.
And we have to keep that policy alive, or they have to keep it alive. Otherwise, the business is going to shift. Any other questions? All right, thank you.